YouTube, my name is Lloyd, and today I want to talk to you about my criticisms of Buddhism, why I think it's a bad idea. Basically, in Buddhism there is such a thing as lineage teaching, and when I was a Buddhist, about 8 years, it always sat uncomfortably with me. Why is there lineage teaching? It seemed odd. They were constantly going on about who taught who. People would dismiss other Buddhists by having been taught by the wrong people, and people who taught Buddhism regularly would become gurus or leaders of cults who would, how can I put it politely, take advantage of their situation regularly. Not always, maybe, I don't know. Maybe there were times when they weren't taking advantage in some way. People who claim to be enlightened also, gurus, using a position, having status, being in a position of power. Anyway, so why was there lineage teaching? Because it seemed odd to me that I was there trying to transcend ego, and I was being taught that I should be valuing the people who teach me and seeking a stronger relationship with them, and that seemed egotistical to me. Obviously, I mean, the ego of the student-teacher relationship, that seemed an ego relationship. It was inherently something that I would seek to transcend, and therefore I was trying not to participate in it. It seemed odd. Why was it there? Anyway, I still believed in enlightenment as an idea. Now, it came clear to me over a long time that, it took a long time for it to become clear to me that when somebody in power is making somebody else do something, or asking them, or just getting them, or successfully having them attempt to do something that is impossible. Now, if you were in some horrible situation where you were forced to join the army or the police or something, like I was told a story of a guy in Uruguay quite recently, in the 60s I think it was, who had to do some national service. He opted to join the police because it wouldn't be as bad as the army, and on joining he was made to clean the toilets without any equipment whatsoever. Of course, it was impossible to clean the toilets without any cleaning equipment, without any soap or bleach or anything like that, or brushes. Trying to do it with your bare hands, you can't actually make something clean. So there was a setting of an impossible task, making him try to do it. The degradation of it being the toilets also, I mean, that added to it, but the whole incapable of doing it, therefore creating a moral debt within the person to the people who set the task. When an impossible task is set, the person who has gone through the cognitive dissonance of attempting to do it is now invested in doing it to whatever extent. They then fail to do it, and in doing so, and in the failing, they are then left with a indebtedness to the people who set up the task, or set up the impossible task. That is what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is the perfect... These were told to me once as, imagine being made to bake a cake, but not being given all of the things you need to bake the cake. Well, imagine being made to bake a cake, but cakeness itself does not exist. Even if you bake the cake, it isn't a thing that can exist. You cannot acknowledge the existence of cakeness. Well, that is what enlightenment is, very clearly. It is the attainment that is not an obtainment. You cannot own enlightenment. You cannot be enlightened yourself. It is something that transcends self. Therefore, you can't have it. It's the perfect impossible task set. It is perfect because it is impossibility in and of itself. So gurus set themselves up to teach others enlightenment. People volunteer to go to try to learn enlightenment. They get set this impossible task, but what they learn is a toxic relationship between them and a teacher. That is what is learnt when the impossible task is set. And that is why the ego of the teacher-pupil relationship is so significantly important in Buddhism. So that's why lineage is a thing, because it is an inevitable outcome of the act of teaching impossible tasks, and enlightenment is the impossible task. It isn't a thing, it isn't even a task. They would say something along those lines. Wow. So yeah, try not to be a Buddhist. And if you are, or you think that there is something to enlightenment, consider what I said. It might help you overcome your attachment to an abusive teacher. There are many other sort of smaller control issues in Buddhism, like controlling what you eat, controlling your perception of what cruelty is, being the deciders of what cruelty is, whereas cruelty is a very vague thing that is actually more fluid than you could possibly imagine, really. It's one of, anyway, I'll get into that in maybe some other video. A bit dark here. Anyway, so like, subscribe, argue with me if you must, ask any question. I think I've sort of clarified what I wanted to say. I mean, I could, a little bit more would be, if you became enlightened, and you were actually enlightened, and then you went out to teach enlightenment that you had learned, what you would be teaching would be the toxic relationship, because that is what the setting of the impossible task is. I mean, you could say it's not impossible because you have done it, but it is something that cannot be conveyed, it is something that cannot be tested, it is something that cannot be clarified or pinpointed or even classified. It's beyond classification. So yeah, it remains impossible. Or if you were someone who was seeking enlightenment and you went to a teacher, what you would learn was the ego of the toxic relationship. Pardon me. Oof. So yeah, I just see pain there. I just see the delusion and the manipulation of a manipulative person in it. Now, do all structures need to have this sort of abuse? I would call it an abuse. Maybe they do. Maybe we are humans and that is part of what has to happen in our societies. I don't know. But I've just witnessed it in Buddhism. I explained it to someone quite recently and they pointed out, oh, that's the first time Buddhism has been expressed in such a way as to be the same as every other religion. Now, I'm someone who refers to themselves as having a relationship with God, so I wouldn't say it's just like any other religion, but for them it clarified that there is a control and manipulation process happening in Buddhism that people aren't aware of, that people just assume that enlightenment is a positive thing, rather than it having this inherent impossibility, impossible task setting, learnt behavior of habituation and subordination in relationship. Yeah, because when you try to do the impossible task, you learn to be subordinate to the person who sets the task. By being subordinate to the person who sets the task, you habituate yourself to being subordinate in that way. And that's not a good thing in my mind. I think people should not be learned, or should not learn to be subordinate. That they should be autonomous individuals with an enriched life. Anyway, thank you. Like, subscribe, or dislike, and argue, and we get into a conversation. That would be great. Thank you very much. Goodbye.